Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the honor of speaking with Major Anthony A.B. Bourke, a highly accomplished and decorated F-16 fighter pilot. A.B.'s remarkable 20-year career in the U.S. Air Force and Air National Guard includes flying tactical missions around the globe and being one of the first pilots to fly an F-16 in Homeland Defense efforts over New York City in the aftermath of September 11th. Following his military career, A.B. transitioned into the business world, applying the same tools and techniques that made him one of our nation's premier fighter pilots. He quickly became the top producing mortgage banker in the Western United States and then a key player in a California-based startup, dramatically growing annual revenue from $500,000 to $65 million in just 3 years. A.B.'s entrepreneurial spirit led him to found Afterburner Seminars, a global training company that became one of Inc. magazine's 500 fastest growing companies. Today, he is the CEO and founder of Mach Consulting, where he shares his message of peak performance with audiences worldwide. Join us as we explore A.B.'s journey from flying high-performance aircraft to achieving business success and learn how his military experiences have shaped his approach to leadership and continuous improvement. A.B. truly embodies what it means to be a strategic veteran. So let's dive in and warmly welcome Major Anthony Bourke to the Strategic Veteran Podcast. Anthony, brother, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Adam, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's always exciting when I get to talk to a fellow pilot. I'm a little jealous because I never made it to jets, but I can't wait to hear all about your story. And let's just jump right in. Where did you grow up and what inspired you to become an F-16 fighter pilot?
Wow. I grew up in a town called Palo Alto, California, which when I grew up there was kind of a laid-back community next to Stanford University. Since the invention of the silicon chip, that has changed a little bit. But, I grew up in a family. My father had been a Navy A-4 pilot. He flew 5 years on active duty. He was a ROTC out of college, and then another 5 years in the reserves. He ultimately became a United Airlines pilot. And so I kind of grew up in an aviation family. And, what inspired me to get in the military pretty early on, the first time I saw him fly an airplane, and then the first time I saw the Blue Angels at Moffett Field, I pretty much said, I have to do that. Yeah. And by about age 16, I kind of had a fully baked dream. And my dream was to be a 35-year-old F-16 pilot in the reserves, United Airlines captain based in San Francisco, and a bachelor. I thought that was the dream. And, it's good to have a plan. They don't always quite work out the way you expected. But at age 27, I was flying F-4 Phantoms in the active duty out of McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey, which I think now is called Joint Base Fort Dix. My squadron was transitioning from F-4 Phantoms to KC-135 tankers, and my future picture didn't include flying around passing gas. And so I kind of scrambled, started applying all over the country, got hired by an F-16 unit in California, Fresno, California, the 144th Fighter Wing, California Air National Guard, and applied to the airlines, and they wouldn't hire me. And most of you people probably know this out there. It wasn't really because I was a bad guy. It was because at that time, the airlines had plenty of pilots. So they were looking for pilots with like 3,000 hours of experience. And I had about 1,000 hours of experience. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I would say that was kind of the luckiest thing that ever happened to me professionally because it forced me to get a real job. And I ended up pursuing my other passion of starting and building at least what I thought were great businesses. And so I went down the path. I think you covered a little bit of it in my bio, but the first thing I did is I went to work for a company called Weyerhaeuser Mortgage, and we opened a branch for Weyerhaeuser in the Central Valley of California. And I loved it. I mean, here I was slinging mortgages, working in the town where I was also flying F-16s. I should have mentioned along the way, I got married. I had my first child. And, in the end, I ended up having 3 kids, and I'm living in Fresno. I'm flying F-16s. It's kind of cool to be a mortgage banker or any kind of business figure in the community. When you're a local F-16 pilot, everyone wants to do business with you. And that really took off. I mean, like I think you said, I became their top producing mortgage banker. And I don't know why I left that business. I was making good money. I was home all the time. But somehow I got gobbled up by this California-based startup. Not a particularly sexy company. They were a family-owned paint manufacturing business. And they wanted to figure out how they could sell their paint to the Home Depot. So they hired me and another fighter pilot to help them do just that. I ran the Western US. He ran the Eastern US. And we were pretty successful. We ultimately landed 40 feet of space in every Home Depot west of Minneapolis, which when I left was 420 stores. And as you said, kind of $65 million of revenue. And that was a really exciting ride. I mean, that involved lots of hiring, lots of training, lots of execution, lots of competition with other vendors, and just going out there and kind of kicking butt and taking names every day. And so what we started to realize was everything we were doing in these businesses to grow our business, to train our people, to execute and to win was kind of the same thing I was doing in my spare time flying F-16s. And so it was from there, this idea of Afterburner Seminars came along. We thought, geez, why don't we start a management training company where we can, have fighter pilot principles applied to the world of business? And of course, we went and pitched that idea to Home Depot. We said, hey, Depot, we've got this great management training program. It's perfect for you. You basically have orange boxes. You don't really make anything. You just have people. And if your people execute at a higher level, you'll sell more product. You'll improve your margins. You'll grow your share price. Why don't you try one of our programs? Because it's just basically like running a fighter squadron. And so they said, well, we'd love to do that. And why don't you guys come in 3 weeks and put on one of your training programs? And we said, well, we'll be there. And as you can imagine, Adam, the program wasn't fully baked at that time.
I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was a scramble to go and put that together.
It was a big scramble, and fear can be a great motivator sometimes. And we did scramble, and 3 weeks later we showed up in Paces Ferry to Atlanta, Georgia, and put on a full day interactive team building program for them. And at the end of that program, their VP of Human Resources said, this is the best thing we've ever done. We're so excited about your program that we want you to train all 2,500 of our store managers this year. And we think the rest of corporate America should hear about what you're doing. We're going to call the Wall Street Journal and tell them a little bit about it.
So you hit a home run right out the gate.
As we say, better lucky than good. It made for a rocket ride. Back then, there really wasn't an internet. I mean, there kind of was, but nobody knew about it. We did not have an office. We did not have an 800 number. The office was in my partner's home, in the basement of his home up on Lake Lanier, Georgia. He had one of those old-fashioned 16, well, now they're old-fashioned, 16 message answering machines down in his basement. And the article came out, a half-page story on the cover of the Wall Street Journal Marketplace section, fighter pilot principles applied to the world of business. And when that article came out, he was fishing in Nicaragua. And so he had no contact at all. When he came back, there were 16 messages on that answering machine. And that really was the birth of really what for me was an incredibly exciting ride. We grew that business pretty dramatically over 11 years to a place where we had 50 men and women fighter pilots working for us. We were putting on about 300 programs every year around the country, half day, multi-day, full days, interactive team building seminars, keynote speeches, corporate coaching, all around this idea of flawless execution. And in 2007, I sold that business, which was really dumb luck timing. You probably remember 2008, 2009.
Yeah,
The
I sure
economy
do.
slowed down just a little bit, and there really were no meetings and events. And then in 2000, I had a non-compete for a couple of years. And in 2009, actually, I should mention it quickly because I took about 6 months where I realized, just kind of enjoying life. And I realized over those 6 months that I could retire. Like retirement would be fine with me. I found myself so busy every day doing stuff that I really loved, surfing, skiing, just, being outdoors, stuff that I really like. I could retire then. But, I felt too young to get out of the game. And so somehow I got roped into getting involved in private equity fundraising. And I did that for a couple of years. It was a different world. I was calling on people like CalPERS or Utah pension program or Texas teachers program. So these are state employees that are investing large amounts of money and hopefully investing in my funds. And while I loved the people I worked with and I learned a lot, I kind of realized my real passion was in this world of speaking and sharing my message. And so when my non-compete went away, I started this current business, which is called Mach 2. And
That's
that
awesome.
was long-winded, Adam, but I
Yeah,
hope that gave you a little background.
it definitely gives me plenty of background. So my first question is very clearly you adopted some serious principles from flying jets while on active duty, whether that be the F4 or in the Guard when you go to the F-16. So talk about some of the lessons that you learned from flying those airplanes and how those apply to the business world. How do those two things equal each other out, right? Let's help everyone understand that because not everybody's a pilot. Not everybody understands what goes into being a pilot. And I speak from experience when I say that because when I got out of the Army, I went to flight school and I had this notion in my idea that flying an airplane was as simple as get in, start it up, take off, fly from point A to point B. And that is very underestimating what it takes to actually become a pilot because at times there is, particularly when I was learning how to fly instruments, there's so much going on in that cockpit. It's really easy to be overwhelmed. And there's all kinds of systems that you put in place, aeronautical decision making and this, that, and the other that help you become a more proficient pilot, that and experience. So talk about some of those things that translate over into the business world from becoming a pilot.
Yeah. This is so funny. And I know you get this question all the time. I certainly do. And it's, basically something like another military guy or gal, whether they're active duty, in the reserves, just got out. And the question always comes about the same way. AB, I don't get it. How did you do it? Like, if I wasn't flying a jet or driving a tank, I don't know what I'd do, man. I'd be flipping burgers or selling shoes. I don't really have any other skills. And, I look at them and I say, you have no idea the skill set you bring to the corporate world. I mean, every company out there is dying for people like you. You are professional. You're a team player. You're mission focused. You don't let obstacles get in the way, and people trust you. I mean, that's kind of the 5 key things that make people successful in the business world. But for some reason, there's this belief in the military. It's almost like on the civilian side, they're speaking another language, and I don't think I could ever learn it. And it's just not true. So I just, I want to tell all your listeners out there, if you're thinking of staying in, do it. Because, my time in the service was great. I actually did 20 years, 5 active and 15 in the reserves. But if you're thinking about getting out, don't sell yourself short. You've got the skill set to be super successful. And there are a ton of companies out there who I work with every day who are dying to hire former military folks. So I'll make that point. The aviation thing, Adam, you get this as well as I do. I think first, I'm going to take it one step further. For me, because I was a little bit of a free spirit when I joined the military. I mean, for crying out loud, I went to UC Berkeley. I was a soccer player. I probably did some extracurricular activities that weren't really approved by Uncle Sam.
Yep.
But the first thing I got was when I went to officer training school. They kind of, and I'm going to use the word not in a negative way, but they brainwashed me in a really good way. And they just helped me understand that, discipline mattered. Having a structured life was important. Building trust with others, working as a team, kind of doing the same things over and over again until you got it right. That all mattered. And so I came out of officer school like with a whole different view on life. And, something as simple as showing up on time, I didn't care about that much. But, the military just taught me, wake up in the morning, make your bed, show up on time, do your job, work with others. So that all helped me a lot. And then I went to pilot training. And I think what I learned in pilot training more than anything was planning, discipline, following procedures, trusting the procedures that have been developed by others, because literally they're written in blood. Believing in the standards. And then this idea that I know you're super familiar with, but at the end of the mission, not being afraid to debrief, close the door and kind of go at it. What's working? What's not? How can we do things better? Let's get a little bit better tomorrow. And recognizing that no one's ever going to fly the perfect mission. You're never going to have a perfect day. And so just get over it, man. Just keep moving forward. Keep getting better. I used to have a backseater that flew with me in the F4, and every time I screw up, I go, "Doggone it, man! How come I keep screwing that up?" And he'd go, "AB, that's why we train. If you were a God-given fighter pilot from the beginning, we wouldn't have to train you, but nobody is. So that's why we train. Keep getting better."
Yeah, of course. No, that makes a ton of sense. And you're absolutely right. Like, discipline is the foundation of everything that I do today. Discipline's always there for me. It doesn't let me down. You can always rely on it to get you through the tough things. And sometimes discipline itself is tough, right? It's tough to want to get up in the morning when you're tired or exhausted, or it's tough to want to take that last meeting when you've been in meetings for 12 hours that day or whatever. But you just lean on those skills that the military taught you. And you're absolutely right. Can you talk about, I really want to hear your story about how it came to be that you're flying an F-16 over Ground Zero in New York City for, after the aftermath of 9/11. I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened. I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a huge influence on why I joined the military. However, the biggest influence on why I joined the Army was because I just wanted out of small town America. So how does that come about, and what was the mission at that point? Because I do remember that day as being an ultra confusing day for the nation. We had no idea what was going on, what was coming, where it was coming from, and any of that stuff. So I assume there was a mission behind it.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'll try to make this short. The morning of 9/11, I was CEO of the company we talked about earlier, Afterburner Seminars. And I had been up on Lake Placid, New York on September 10th, working with a group of investment bankers, putting on a seminar for them. Nice group of people. They invited me for dinner that night on Lake Placid, spent the night. And then the morning of September 11th, I was driving to the Burlington, Vermont International Airport because I was on my way to catch a 9:30 a.m. United Airlines flight from Burlington out to Denver, where I was going to be meeting with another pilot. Not another pilot, with another client. And putting on another program. At that time, I was also an F-16 pilot with the 144th Fighter Wing, California Air National Guard, based in beautiful Fresno, California, where I lived, had a wife and 3 children. So basically 3,000 miles from home, 3,000 miles from my squadron in Burlington. And at that time, believe it or not, I was also a United Airlines pilot, first officer based out of San Francisco. So when I got on that 9:30 a.m. United Airlines flight, I came into the airplane. I turned left, as I always did, walked up to the cockpit, poked my head in, saw the captain sitting in the left seat. And, this is kind of a professional courtesy. I just checked in and said, "Hey, good morning, Captain Anthony Bourke, first officer based out of San Francisco. Sir, I'm riding with you, sitting back in seat 2 Alpha. Just wanted to say hello." And, that captain, standard ops, looked over his shoulder and said, "Hey, man, welcome aboard. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. Thanks for saying hi." And I said, "Sir, I'll do that. But, coming in this morning, I heard something really crazy on the radio. I heard about some guy that flew his airplane into the side of the World Trade Center. I was just wondering, sir, did you hear anything about that?" Captain, once again, very casually looked over his shoulder. He said, "Yeah, man, I did hear something about that. I sure hope that guy's okay." That's exactly what I'd been thinking. Adam, don't take this personally. You probably know it already, but in the airlines and the military, we have a very affectionate term we use for like Cessna 172 pilots. Are you familiar with that term?
I'm sure once you say it, I'll be pretty familiar with it.
We call you flaps, FLAP, which stands for flipping light airplane pilots.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Replace flipping with fucking. We got
something like that. You got it.
Yeah.
So, we're both thinking like, what kind of flap would have flown his or her Cessna 182 into the side of the World Trade Center? And how far did they bounce? I mean, how badly did they get hurt? And that was literally the end of our conversation. I went back and sat in my seat. I started reading the newspaper. And about 10 minutes later, the first flight attendant came up to my seat. A super uncomfortable conversation. She's like, "Excuse me, First Officer Bourke, the captain would like to see you in the cockpit." Pretty unusual right before departure, but
right.
Yeah, this isn't good news. I set down my newspaper. I walked back up in that cockpit. You know how tight this space is, So now it's me, the captain, the first officer, and the first flight attendant all smushed in this cockpit. The captain leans back. He closes the cabin door, cockpit door, and he hands me a piece of paper that's just come off the onboard printer. I look at it. It's from our United Airlines corporate headquarters, and it says, "We've experienced a major catastrophe. We've activated the Emergency Operations Center. Stand by for further words."
Damn.
I mean, I'd never seen language like that come out of our, airline. And I look at the captain and he looks at me and we all look at each other and no one has any possible idea of what could have possibly cost United Airlines headquarters to send a message like that.
And they hadn't grounded you at this point yet, huh?
No, they had not. 5 minutes later, we got a ground stop. So we are grounded. Everybody's getting off the airplane. I walk out in the terminal and I see on the television monitors exactly what you and all the viewers out there saw. And my first reaction was probably exactly the same as, you and so many of the viewers. I just said, "My gosh, how can I help?"
Yeah.
I kind of immediately pulled out my cell phone. I called my squadron commander back in California. I said, "Hey, sir, AB here, stuck in Burlington, Vermont. Just saw what happened on the TV. Just wondering how I could help." He didn't have a lot of time for me. He's like, "AB, you're where, Burlington? Dude, that's like 3,000 miles away. I don't think you're coming home anytime soon. I don't know how you can help us, but, Burlington has an F-16 squadron right on the other side of that field. Why don't you call up their squadron commander, see if you can help them out?" So I hang up with him. Now I call the squadron commander of the 134th Fighter Squadron, This is the Vermont Air National Guard, at the time flying F-16s, now flying F-35s, co-located on the Burlington airport. I say, good morning, sir. Major Anthony Bourke, F-16 pilot, 144th Fighter Wing, California Air National Guard. Sir, I'm stuck here in Burlington. Just saw what happened on the TV. Was wondering if I could help. Long silence on the other end of the line. He goes, dude, let me get this straight. You're an F-16 pilot? Yes, sir. Do you fly the Block 25? Now, this is the exact variant of F-16s we flew 3,000 miles away in California. And I'm sure many of your viewers know there are many variants of the F-16s.
Right.
Yes, sir. He says, dude, what size boots do you wear? He said, I've just been tasked to fly Homeland Defense 24/7 over New York City. I need 12 pilots to do the mission. I've only got 11 here right now. Get over here as quick as you can. I can't do the mission without you. I mean, I hang up with him. I sprint out to the curb, jump in a taxi. We speed around the field. 10 minutes later, we come onto this brand new base. They've already got SPs. I mean, they've already got the chicane coming in. They've got SPs and dogs fully loaded. They mirror under the car, the full deal. Finally get on base. I'm immediately greeted by life support officers who give me new flight suit, new harness, new boots, new helmet, everything I need to fly the jet. I go into the squadron. I meet the other 11 pilots. We get an intelligence briefing to try to bring us up to speed on, at that time, what truly very little anyone knew about the situation at that time.
Yeah, nobody knew anything, right?
Well, the intel officer sure didn't know anything, and we didn't. we were. I remember that intel brief because the intel officer was trying to tell us what was up, and CNN was playing right behind him, and really all eyes were on CNN because that's really where we were getting most of our information at that time, or any other major news channels. So once that intel briefing's over, I sit down with a brand new wingman, a guy I've just met, super good guy, worked for IBM in town, part-timer just like me. We did a briefing of our own to, get me up to speed on local procedures, how we'd operate as a two-ship, tactics we'd use in different scenarios. And then just a few hours later, I find myself taking off in, a jet I'd never flown, flying with a wingman I'd never met, flying in airspace I'd never flown in. And amazingly, it kind of felt like I was flying that mission for the 100th time. And going back to your initial point, that is the power of the training and the standardization we've developed, not just in the Air Force, but in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, that you can kind of plug and play people anywhere in the world under the most challenging circumstances and get them up to speed pretty quickly and executing at a high level.
Yeah, it's that adaptability piece, right? You were able to, okay, so this is an F-16. You said it's the 25 block variant or whatever. I'm sure I messed that up. I don't know.
No, you did. Block 25 is exactly right.
But it's for those that don't know, when you fly an airplane, every airplane flies differently. They all have their own little nuances in the controls, or the rudder pedals, or how the trim works, or whatever. Every airplane I've ever flown, and I don't have nearly as much experience as AB does, but they all have quirks about them. And I remember from being in flight school, you develop like this love-hate relationship with certain airplanes, particularly out of flight school. Some of them are better than others. You have your favorites, but it speaks to that adaptability piece. You're in unfamiliar airspace. I don't know how much flying you had done around Burlington, Vermont, or New York City,
zero.
Right. And
busiest airspace in the world, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably not too bad, huh?
Well, in the end, when we took off for that first mission, I'll never forget, you're taking off in your own country with a fully loaded jet. In my case, I was carrying 2 AMRAAMs, 2 Sidewinders, full load in the gun, and I'm, for real defending my homeland. And, you stroke up that afterburner, the airplane's super heavy. I've got a couple external fuel tanks on, and you think to yourself, please God, don't let me fuck up. And you get airborne, we pass 18,000 feet. We're checking in with New York Center, and we said, New York Center, FANG 2, flight of 2 F-16s, headed to New York City. We'd like an altitude block from 20 to 24,000 feet. It says, FANG 2, you can have any altitude you want. You're the only 2 airplanes in the sky. And that was pretty powerful because at that point, that was the busiest airspace in the world. And of course, when you're starting to navigate south down the Hudson River to go to New York, you look south, and 300 miles away, if you remember, the weather was
Do.
crystal clear. You could see this huge smoke coming out of the ground 300 miles away, and it was like, okay, I know exactly where we're going. And
Just point the airplane in that direction and go.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was a weird feeling, a very weird feeling. And you're thinking like, okay, if these guys had been so successful in this first phase, I mean, they've put two airplanes, they've overtaken two airliners, put two of them into the World Trade Center and successfully taken those buildings down. They put one in the Pentagon. They had another one out in Pennsylvania. I mean, what's next? You
yeah.
know, are they bringing dirty nukes into our harbors? Or is there going to be a huge anthrax thing? And what can I do as a pilot in an airplane to defend against that? You just kind of thinking like, what's phase two? What's phase three?
So what was the, I mean, what were you actually looking for? Were you just kind of almost just a presence patrol in the air in case there was another airplane that was going to come and do something similar?
Yeah. So that first week over New York, if you remember, basically everyone was grounded. There were no
Yeah, I do
airplanes.
remember that because relating to that what you said, you can have any altitude you want. You're the only two airplanes in the sky. That's got to be a sombering feeling because I remember plugging into ADSB, getting ForeFlight up for the first time, and it's a real eye opener how many other airplanes are actually out there that you probably just never see. And I know that's, see and identify is your primary job as a pilot in command, but you can't see all of them and you can't identify all of them because the sky is a really big place.
Yeah. Yeah. So that first week over New York City, really all airplanes were grounded and we were flying. They were basically 6 hour missions. Take off, fly a half hour south over New York, show up on cap. For me, ultimately, my cap time as the dust settled was 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day. So you would let other airplanes off. They'd fly back to Burlington. You'd check into the airspace, or we would check into the airspace. The only other airplane flying was a KC-135 tanker up above us because it's long missions and we needed gas, so we could air refuel with them. And then we would fly long racetrack patterns over New York City, kind of like from the Verrazano Bridge all the way up to kind of the northwest side of New York. And just kind of waiting for a controlling agency. This one was called Giant Killer to pair you on any possible threat.
Okay.
And it was a long and boring stuff. In that first week, the only thing I got paired on was the first day we were paired on an unknown rider flying at very low altitude and slow speed, which we intercepted and visually ID'd as an Army helicopter. And then from there, you're kind of waiting for what could be the next thing. Are they going to send a drone in? Could they send a civilian airplane? After I flew in New York and I was finally able to get myself back to my family and to my home squadron in California, we spent the next 9 months 24/7 flying Homeland Defense, in my case, over the skies of California, San Francisco, LA, Hoover Dam, nuclear power plants. And those missions were a little more exciting because there were times when we were paired on airliners. A big one for me was flying out of March Air Force Base down in Riverside, getting paired on a commercial airliner out of LA, where shortly after takeoff, one of the passengers had gone into the bathroom, locked the door, and was smoking. And the flight attendants were trying to get them to come, it was a he in this case, to come out, and he wouldn't come out. And this was pretty shortly after, if you remember, the shoe bomber that
I
tried
do.
to carry
Yep.
bombs in his shoes and light him off in the airplane. And so they declared an emergency. They were headed back to land at LAX. We were scrambled on them. We were a mile in trail with visual contact and kind of waiting for the order which quite honestly was a terrible feeling.
I
I mean,
believe it.
like all of my father was a United pilot, my sister is a United pilot, all my squadron mates are airline pilots. My whole life centered around airlines, and of course, the airplane's full of U.S. citizens. And you think, man, am I really going to get this order to shoot down, a freaking commercial airliner over my own country filled with U.S. citizens? This is not what I signed up for. So a little bit of anxiety around that one.
I believe it, man. So you did 5 years active duty and you were flying the F4 while you were active, right? And the reason you transitioned over to the Guard was because you didn't want to be a fuel pump in the sky, essentially.
I always wanted to fly for the Guard. First of all, I thought it was the fastest way to get an airline job. I thought it was the best way to not be at the whims of the Air Force, where every 2 or 3 years you're getting moved to some base for some assignment that the Air Force needs you for. So in getting in the Guard, I was able to choose my base, choose my airplane, and fly there full time or part time, really for 20 years. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. And when I was lucky enough, because I applied to Guard units all over the country, basically begging them to hire me so I didn't have to go to KC 135 school. I got hired by the Boise Air National Guard. They were flying F4 Phantoms, but they were flying Wild Weasels. And I had orders. I was going to Wild Weasel school, and when we got halfway across the country, I was with my wife. We pulled into a Motel 6 in Oklahoma City. A terrible day of driving, freezing rain, nasty cold, and I was exhausted. And I called home to my father because he had my 1-year-old daughter. We'd shipped her out so she didn't have to do the drive. And he says, "Hey, your daughter's fine, but I just got a call from the squadron." This is before cell phones. I just got a call from the squadron commander of the Fresno Air Guard. He's looking for you. You should probably give him a call. And so I hung up with him. I called the squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Al Hears, one of my personal heroes. I said, "Hey, Colonel Hears, Lieutenant Bourke, how can I help you, sir?" And he said, "Hey, Anthony, you still want to fly F-16s in California?" I'm like, "You got to be kidding me."
You're on your way to Weasel school and now you got the job flying F-16s. That's pretty cool.
Oh my God. Well, I said, "Can I call you back in the morning, sir?" I hung up with him and I looked at my wife and I said, "Honey, we're not moving to Boise anymore. We're moving to California." And she said, "No fucking way. I am not moving to another shithole so you can fly some stupid airplane. We're moving to Boise." Oh man, that was a rough night. Anyway, we kind of worked through it. And the next morning I called up Colonel Hears to let him know, "Sir, I'm on my way." And then I had to call the squadron commander in Boise, who was really
probably not happy.
first class guy. And I called him the night before and I told him about my dilemma. And he told me, "Hey, why don't you sleep on this and let me know?" And I said, "Hey, sir, Anthony Bourke." And he goes, "Well, what's it going to be? You going to go with location? Or you going with jet?" And I said, "Sir, I'm going to go with the jet." And he said, "God damn it. I talked to 10 guys last night about your situation. Every one of them said the same thing. Good on you, man. Enjoy it."
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
Now, you were going to Boise, you said to fly the Weasel. What is the Weasel?
F4G Wild Weasel flies the hunter killer mission.
Okay.
It's really
because I thought, didn't the F-14 replace the F-4?
In the Navy, yes. In the Air Force, we never had the F-14.
Okay,
the F-4 kind of replaced the F-105 and others like it.
That's where I get confused because I had an ex-father-in-law that was an F-4 pilot and then transitioned into the F-14s before he retired from the Navy. And I didn't realize that was the difference. The Air Force never had the F-14. So you guys went straight from the F-4 to the F-16s.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about that transition from active duty to the Guard, because transitioning anything really for anybody in the military is tough. Did you have any trouble with your transition, or were you pretty confident in your ability to go out and find work and not really lose that? I mean, you're going to the Guard to do the same thing that you were already doing on active duty, right? You're still flying jets, you're still flying fighter planes, right? So there's not a whole lot of transition that goes on there, is there?
Yes and no. I like to say you're still in a motorcycle gang. You're riding a different motorcycle. Fresno was unique from most Guard units in that Fresno required all of the pilots to live within 50 miles of the base because Fresno had a Homeland Defense mission. And so they needed everyone to be there if, the call came and we had to do something like 9/11 or whatever the other missions were.
Right. It's basically QRF purposes at that point,
Yeah. So a little bit like an active duty, a lot of the pilots are around, although a high percentage of the pilots are part timers and they have airline jobs and they're on trips all the time. So you're not quite, you kind of make your own life. You can't just count on squadron activity to keep you busy all the time. So that was probably the first thing. And then the second thing is, although they supported me as a full timer for almost 2 years, which I really needed because I wanted to get up to speed and be competent in the F-16. But at some point, you are kind of expected to go get a real job. And when the airlines didn't hire me, there's this anxiety or this, as you call it, this transition to, oh shoot, man, I'm gonna do more than fly airplanes. I'm gonna do something else as well. And so, for me, that just involved, I don't know what you want to call it, having the courage to pick up the phone and start sniffing around until something worked out. And as I told you, in my case, somebody took a chance on me as a mortgage banker, and that paid off for them, and that paid off for me big time. But I think that's the big one. From a spouse perspective, um, my wife was pretty happy because she knew we were going to be in Fresno for a while. And so she could invest in the community and not feel like, why even invest in these relationships? I'll be gone in 2 or 3 years. And so that was pretty comfortable. I think those are probably the two biggest things.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, right? You had a choice, right, where you didn't get hired as an airline pilot, so you could have sat back and kind of let yourself fall into what I call the transition hole, fall into that dark place, but instead you relied on your discipline and knew that you had to figure something out, so you took a chance on yourself and just started calling around. And I admire that because a lot of people won't take that chance on themselves. They'll stay in their own way, and they won't make those phone calls and try to find something that's out there for them. And then, it paid off for you. You end up in the mortgage banking space. It sounds like you were really, really good at that. And so, the rest is pretty much history. So, you had a relatively easy transition, no substance abuse problems, because obviously you're flying jets and that's super important to you, whereas people who come from the infantry, like I did, where drinking is a culture, and you're expected to do it. You fall into that transition hole real quick, and before you know it, you're looking at the bottom of a bottle and then putting a gun in your mouth because you just want to end it all because you don't know which way is up. So I'm glad to hear that your transition was pretty smooth, and it just sounds like you were just, I don't know, you're so in love with flying airplanes and just the systems and the processes. And it's like you said earlier, right? Like for those that aren't familiar with flying, everything is a checklist. Everything in an airplane is a checklist. And you just need to follow the checklist because, like you said, those checklists are written in blood. People had to go die to figure out these things, right? And so, with those checklists, just transferring all that stuff over and that knowledge, it sounds like it lended itself really well to you starting Afterburner Seminars, and then once the non-compete's up, Mach 2 Consulting. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you're hitting on such a great point, Adam. There is a checklist and to help people that are making the transition either from active duty to the reserves or from getting off active duty or the reserves and joining the civilian world. I mean, man, the Veterans Administration, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, They've got resources coming out their ears. And now you've got all these companies that are actively trying to hire former military. I mean, Comcast is a great example. Northwestern Mutual is a great example. I could name 10 more. People want to hire you. And there's a checklist to help you make the transition. So you have the skills and the checklist is there. Don't go down the path that Adam talked about of the frickin' vacuum of self-pity and just sitting around drinking. I mean, go out there and frickin' grab it, man. I used to use the expression, Adam, in fact, I still do, when I'm 70. And every decision I made, big decisions in life, like when I'm 70, probably now it should be when I'm 90 because we're all going to live longer. But when I'm 70, kind of lying on my deathbed, am I going to regret not having taken this chance to join the military? Am I going to regret not joining the reserves? Am I going to regret not taking this chance and getting into investment or mortgage banking, starting a business? Yeah, man, I am going to regret it. So take the chance. You're going to fail at some stuff. Big fucking deal. Get up the next day and try again. People fail all the time. Some of the best tech entrepreneurs in the world are the ones that are constantly with this dogma of fail faster, get to the truth faster. So
I'm like that too. I just take the approach, I've come such a long way. And I was one of those guys who wouldn't get out of my own way and take a chance on myself, didn't love or respect myself, didn't think I was capable of all kinds of things, and just did. I had all the pity on myself and was waiting for somebody to come save me. But since I've had turned my life around and started doing everything I've done, I just approach everything with the only way I can fail is forward. And I have to fail to learn certain lessons to get me to the next level anyway. So I really kind of agree with what you just said in failing faster. Fail faster so you learn the lesson faster so you can get to where you want to go faster.
I mean, think of all the training every listener on this podcast went through. That you weren't an expert rifleman when you first started. You freaking failed and your instructors beat the hell out of you. And yet, through that, you got better faster and you became really competent at what you did. So you got to just put it out there and take chances. And, that doesn't mean that going in the civilian world is for everyone. You can join a reserve unit and be a full-timer there and have a really great life in the same community, raise your family in that community. You're going to deploy sometimes. But, to me, today, the reserves are just an arm of the active duty. I mean, you're not like weekend warriors anymore. If there's a conflict, you're going to be some of the first people to get deployed, and you're still at the heat of the action. So I don't know, man. Take chances. It's
That's
okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what is the vision behind Mach 2 Consulting and how has it grown over the years?
Yeah, my vision. So Mach 2 is just a way for me to continue to, make a nice living, but really pursue my passion of public speaking, consulting, training. And, my goal is to speak 40 to 50 times a year. My business model is quite simple. So that's basically one speech a week, which I have come to believe is good for my marriage. Being gone one night a week is healthy.
Yep.
And my business model is really simple. If I speak more than 50 times a year, I raise my prices. And if I speak less than 40 times a year, I work harder. And, working harder means, continue to produce new content, work harder on social media, write materials that make me a subject matter expert, reach out and call on customers. I have a whole bunch of agents that represent me. Reach out and make sure I'm in touch with my agents so they understand my latest messaging and why I'd be a good fit for their clients. But my favorite speaker in the whole world is a guy named Charlie Plumb. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you. Charlie Plumb, it was a 7-year POW in the Hanoi Hilton. He's 83 years old today.
That's why I knew that name. I was trying to think of it. Yeah.
I first saw him give a speech when my father was a United Airline pilot and they were on strike, and he did a simulcast of his speech, which starts in complete silence, and he paces 5 feet one way, 5 feet the other, 5 feet one way, 5 feet the other for about a minute. And it's kind of an awkward start. And then he turns and says, "This was the space that I lived in for 7 years in the Hanoi Hilton." And whoo, he's kind of got you right there. And he really moved me, and he continues to move me because today he's, I think, 82 or 83 years old. Captain Plum, if I got that wrong, forgive me, but he's still out there speaking. And so, for me, Mach 2 is a way to continue to do something I love for the next several years of my life. And it also allows me to pursue some other passions in life. I spend a lot of time skiing in the winter and a lot of time riding a mountain bike in the summer. But in my spare time, I make wine, Russian River Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, down in California, and I've been doing that for 20 years. So, I just
you got your hands in a little bit of everything here, brother. You're just doing all kinds of shit.
I like to pursue my passions. I believe if you pursue your passions, the rest will take care of itself.
And that's the whole message of this show, man, is when you get out, you have to let go of your identity from being locked into that fixed mindset of one job, one mission, one fight, and discover who you really are, what you're passionate about, and then pursue those relentlessly, because that's how life was meant to be lived.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We had a saying in my squadron, which, everyone was worried about their Finney flight, their last flight. And, you knew it was coming at some point. And so you're 3 months out, you're 2 months out, you're 1 month out. And then the day comes and you think, man, if I'm not flying F-16s, will I still have my mojo? Who will I be? For the last 20 years, basically, I've been identified as a fighter pilot. This is what I do. This is what I'm proud of. What the hell am I going to do now? It was a big thing. And it turns out you'll always be a fighter pilot. You'll always be an infantryman. You'll always be a Navy SEAL. I mean, that's who you are in your core. But man, that skill set can make you a rock star in a whole lot of other things if you just let it, instead of just kind of clinging on to what you once were.
Yeah, of course. How much flying are you doing today?
I'm starting to do more because, well, two reasons. One, there's a fantastic former Navy F-18 pilot who runs the FBO in Heber named Nadim Abu Haidar, born and raised in Lebanon from an American mother and a Lebanese father. And, super great fighter pilot, went to Top Gun school. And he runs the FBO in Heber, and he has a really cool airplane called an Extra 300. So He's nice enough to take me flying in that thing from time to time. And that's real yanking and banking. I love that. God bless you, Nadim. Don't forget me. And then the other one is my son is local, flight instructing in Salt Lake. And so we're doing some flying together, which is really a lot of fun. Our last trip, we flew out of Salt Lake. We flew down to Page, Arizona, which is basically Lake Powell, landed the airplane, played golf with Lake Powell Muni, spent the night, drank some beers, had dinner, got up in the morning and flew home. And, what better way to spend time with your son or your daughter or, a friend than something like that. So that's my other source of aviation right now.
If you could own any plane for personal use, what would it be and why?
Well, I think the F-16s are for sale now. So if I could own that, I'm not only competent, but it's the greatest airplane I've ever flown. Getting a little more realistic, boy, it'd be fun to own an F-5. There's people that own those, or a T-38. Apparently those are for sale. Gosh, for just flying around,
not like a Cirrus, like a SR-22 or the Honda Jet or even the Cirrus Vision Jet's really cool looking.
The SR-22 is an amazing airplane. And if I were flying single airplanes, or if I owned a single engine airplane full time, I think it'd be an SR-22. Just the safety factor is huge. Having that parachute. In fact, they've got data that says for those that have lost engines, those that have tried to land the airplane like you would a 172 have not had a 100% success rate. Those who have just pulled the parachutes, every single one of them have lived. So pretty cool. And then obviously the cockpit and the avionics of that airplane is amazing.
Yeah, that's
That's a
exactly what draws me to it, is just the simplicity of all of the technology that's in there. Like, it's not presented to you like stuffing a G1000 and a 172 and it's like, I'm fucking lost. Okay. The Cirrus just makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little bit like a Tesla. It's just so well thought out. I think the big risk for people, and this is true of a lot of aviation today, is the avionics are so good. If you're learning with those kind of avionics, um, do you still know how to fly an airplane if those avionics go down, if you lose some of those systems?
I
And
think
so,
no. The answer is no, because
oh,
I think I'm one of the few, at least, where I went to flight school to learn in steam gauges. I did everything from private to commercial in steam gauges. So, and still did NDB stuff. So, that was challenging to use magnetic navigation through the radio of the NDBs before they deactivated the last one. So I know my plan when I was going to be a CFI was, at least through private pilot, no digital flight equipment whatsoever. I want steam gauges, paper maps, learn how to do the chart flip, right? Like, learn how to actually aviate.
yeah, clock to map to ground. Yeah, in fact, I don't know if you saw this, and I'm going to get the details slightly wrong, but just 3 or 4 days ago, there was a Pilatus that was flying at 26,000 feet with a number of people in it. Uh, Declared an emergency, said they were having problems with the autopilot. Some radar tracking saw them in a descent as much as 5,000 feet a minute, and ultimately they crashed that airplane. And while we haven't seen an NTSB report, we don't know yet. The idea that there's pilots out there that can't fly an airplane without the autopilot, and there's been some other cases of this, particularly with Airbuses, um, that shut the stuff off and fly the freaking airplane.
I don't
And
know. I'm with you. I believe that too. I was always taught autopilot's there to kill you. It's not there to help you, particularly if you're climbing in what is it, VS mode or whatever. It's just going to maintain that vertical speed until it kills you. And the PC-12, that's the one airplane I want to fly. So I've heard nothing but good things about that airplane, and it is a dream of mine. It's actually the background on my computer screen. I love that airplane
oh,
so
really?
much.
I've
Yeah.
flown it a few times. They're really well designed. They're super stable, and that engine is super reliable. I mean, I think I haven't seen. I don't want to misspeak, but the safety record of that single engine airplane, I think, is as good, if not better, than most King Airs, which it kind of competes with. Because in the King Air, if it's overgrossed or
Yeah.
high density altitude, oftentimes when you lose an engine, the second engine takes you to the scene of the accident. And so, yeah, PC-12 is a killer airplane. I'm a jet guy, so I would prefer to be flying like some sort of single pilot jet.
Yeah. Like the Vision Jet or the Honda Jet or
Those are pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm typed in a Citation, single pilot. I thought that was a great airplane. Not maybe as sexy as some of those other ones, but
I always wanted
again,
to fly the Citation too. That's really the career path I was aiming for, was to be the fractional guy or the private jet guy. That's what I wanted to do. I like that because there's an element of responsibility to it, from stocking the plane to planning your own flights, that you just don't get at the airlines, right? You just show up, plug in some numbers to the A cars, walk around the airplane, and then you go on about your day, right?
yeah. And, you're kind of bringing up another interesting point from transitional. You know, it's not just pilot jobs that are available in the world of aviation. I mean, they need everybody. They need crew chiefs, they need mechanics, they need avionics specialists, they need flight attendants, they need operations people, they need dispatch people. I mean, there are so many available positions that play right into so many of your viewers' backgrounds if they just take the opportunity to pursue them.
Yes,
And I
sir.
think the same is true for an Army guy. There's so many. For an infantry guy, you could probably list 5 or 10 places in the civilian world where your skill set is a perfect fit. You just got to pick up that phone and make it happen.
Yes, sir. Is there any message you want veterans to take away from our conversation here today before I get you out of here?
Oh man. Well, first, thank you all for your service. I'd say the biggest message I hope you took away today is that you got a lot of skills. I don't care what you did in the service. You've got a lot of skills. People like you, people trust you, people want to hire you. So if you want to make that transition, it's all there for you. And, if I can be helpful in any way, I can be found Anthony Bourke at mach2consulting.com. I'm happy to help. I help veterans all the time in this area. So I hope that message resonated with the group.
I'm sure it will, AB. I really appreciate you being here. You stole my thunder with my last question, was how can they connect with you? And you answered that question. So I'm so grateful you sat down to have this conversation with me. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anthony A.B. Bourke.
Adam, thanks for having me. And we didn't talk enough about your journey, but I'm sure your viewers have a better sense of it. But congratulations for what you've done and the way you've made the transition too. You're a great man. I appreciate those words, man. Everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review. Help us get this in front of 1 million veterans. But before I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025, I know it's a lofty goal, but there's 19 million veterans in the United States. There's no reason we can't hit that goal and save as many veteran lives as possible. Take care, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.